that you're 5 to 6 to 7 months worth of no payment. It's odd that you're telling me the toilets don't work and this is
access or to let him get in there
okay.
to
When
actually see what was going
I don't
on.
want to pay anything because of how bad it is, but you're
Hold on
there
for
at
a
the
second.
same
Let me see
time.
what you submitted, man.
Your Honor, we'd also like to state that when Miss Anderson moved in to the unit, it was clean. There were no issues. There were no bugs. We're not sure if she brought those critters, as she called them, with her.
Oh,
Again, we would love to have treated the property, but she was living there since June 1st, when her lease started. And by December, she wouldn't even give access to let anything,
Well, how
let.
long has she been?
okay. Real quick, let's just do the rundown as far as this case. So, of course, it's an eviction hearing. It looks like allegedly there was approximately between 5 to 6 months of rent unpaid, and basically the landlord is seeking eviction, as well as back rent, of course, and also claiming that the tenant blocked access for repairs, apparently. Now, the tenant is claiming that she's been living with rats, broken toilets, surprise water shutoffs, and she's actually even bringing in her own counterclaim in reference to mold and apparently harassment as well, allegedly. And also, she's claiming that she moved out as well. So basically, what we're trying to understand is the judge going to side with the tenant's claims, or is the landlord's defense going to win the judge order over ultimately? And apparently, there's going to be a twist in this as well. So, y'all, before we get back into it, if you could like the video, I greatly appreciate it. Only takes a second, and it actually helps out more than you know. And also, if you could hide.
She stated in some text messages in December that she was having issues, and Mr. Grant tried to address it. She stated that she had a problem with her refrigerator, and he tried to address it, and he did replace the refrigerator. He's made attempts every time she's had an issue, but I think that she's just rebutted it and tried to be a little bit difficult to give him access or to let him get in there to actually see what was going on. She made complaints that the AC wasn't working. However, when she got the unit, Mr. Grant had invested in 3 commercial grade heating and cooling units, and those were window units. She knew that the split system, which it might be used in some typical homes, but that was not operational, and that's why she was provided with 3 commercial grade heating and cooling units in each of the major areas of the property. If she didn't feel comfortable with that when she walked the unit, when she signed her lease, then she should have said something at that point.
As a rebuttal, Judge Davis, you'll note the air conditioning units that are in the home in the photos, which are not new nor commercial graded.
We do have receipts for those units. They were, I think, approximately $700 each. They provide heating and cooling. They rated at like 12,000 BTUs, which is sufficient to cool up to about 600 square feet. They are sufficient for that property, and it was in that condition when she signed her lease. There was no bait and switch.
What about the rodents?
There might be we live in Georgia. There are big cockroaches that come into people's homes sometimes. She did know that there were
roaches.
lizards.
I'm talking about roaches. I mean, talking about rice or mice.
We weren't aware of any mice. I don't know. I mean, if we can see pictures of that, that'll be, we would more than be willing to take care of any of that stuff. But in December, when he made an attempt to come to the unit, because the refrigerator was delivered in, I believe it was October of 2024. She wasn't noting any of these issues at that time. Come November into December, she started talking about these things, and then she wouldn't give him access to let someone in to make any potential repairs or address these issues. And it's in the text message conversation that Mr. Grant submitted to the court.
Let me finish looking at the evidence that she has. Hold tight. All right.
So the tenant then had some evidence as well. This is going to be a good one. I can already tell, because it looks like both these women are pretty good at, dotting their I's and crossing their T's, as well as maybe even, articulating a little bit. So really going to see, right? It seems like they both kind of have something that they're standing on, and they both provided some form of evidence. This tenant has definitely kept better records than a lot of tenants that we typically see. So should be a pretty decent battle. Let's see who comes out on top though.
All right, so I'm looking at the evidence. So there's a rat or rodent issue from the evidence. I mean, that looks
Oh,
pretty evident. I've seen quite a bit of rat droppings there. The
oh,
geckos, are due. They shouldn't come in your house. I live in Georgia too, and I have had them, but once or twice, but not where they're a repeat issue. I've seen the air conditioning units. I mean, they are bigger units, I guess. I mean, they're not a fan. I guess that's the standard type unit.
No,
Depending
sir,
on,
they're both heating and cooling. Not to cut you off, they have heating and cooling capabilities. They're provided in every bedroom, the living room, and I believe the dining room. So he's made efforts to.
how many are there? Three?
There are two upstairs in the bedrooms, and I believe there is one in the living room and one in the dining room going out to the back.
There's
So,
four.
based upon their rating of 12,000 BTU, that's sufficient to cool up to 550 to 600 square feet. This
Okay.
property, I believe.
You just
Sorry,
don't want to ask me these questions. How many bedrooms is the house?
it's 2 bedrooms.
Okay. And you had 4 units or 3?
Just a correction, sir. There's 3 bedrooms. There's 1 unit in each bedroom. There is the downstairs unit that leads to the backyard where
Mhm.
all of the greenery is.
Okay. All right. So I'm less convinced that there's no air or heat. Like I said, there's some other situations where if there was 1 unit, I would be a little bit concerned, but there are multiple units. But that's so, Ms. Henderson, I do see the issues. I'm going to give you some credit because obviously the property does have some issues with at least rodents from the evidence that you submitted. I did see. Now, tell me again about the water.
You'll see there's a video as well where the person on slide 11.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but tell me about the water. That's what I'm asking. I want to go tell me what you got.
There's been a few instances where my water has been turned off, not by the city construction workers, but by someone who's in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Your Honor, she's noted this previously, and we saw that in her response. However, this property is like a 1970 vintage. They have a main cutoff at the main road. And when they have issues underground within the parking lot areas, they have to shut the water down to the whole community. Mr. Grant is not responsible for the water
I got you. Well, let
cut
me
off.
ask, Miss Henderson, how long has the water been off?
The water would go off for days at a time. When
really?
I would come in, like on slide 25, I'd just come in, and the water was being turned off by Ira, is the person who's normally with Mr. Grant.
Okay. And do you know why it was turned off and turned back on?
I have no idea, but these are outside of the business hours for when the construction workers, they're building an access road or an extension to the 285 in Boulder Crest highway. So they would place a notice when they're turning the waters off.
I get
And
that.
this was not one of those instances. Neither one of them.
So Ms. Anderson, how much? Hold on for a second. How much are you alleging that you owe? And if I know you said nothing, but I would disagree that the property is uninhabitable. I wouldn't say that, but I do think that you have some significant depreciation in lieu of the rodents, as well as the rodents can be problematic and cause a significant issue. But it has been a lot of time that you have not paid, and I know you're saying you're moving, but just
And
you
Your Honor,
got
she has
from even before December. They're alleging. So tell me what you're thinking here.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to come up with it, but you tell me.
Right, but each.
Yeah, because we got to keep into perspective here that it's about, like we said, 5 or 6 months unpaid, right? I agree. It does seem like there's some sketchy things going on, even with the way that she was saying that she's got heating and air units set up. I guess she's referring to like hotel style, how you'll have those air units when you get to certain hotels that are lower quality or whatever, the little long ones that go across the window. I guess she done got some air heating and air units like that, which I mean, I guess that suffices. But at the same time, I mean, you got a house, you would like it to just come out the vents, right? But yeah, this is getting really interesting. Very fast paced, a lot going on. Um, I'm curious how the judge is going to depreciate, like he said, her claims. What I've been noticing a lot of times when the judge gives credit, it's not really much credit. Sometimes it'll be somebody owing 10K and he'll be like, but I'm gonna give you credit. You only owe 9,800. So I'd be interested to see what his final judgment's gonna be at the end of this. Again, y'all, if you could like the video, if you haven't already, it helps more than you know.
Each month I would ask him to make repairs. He not only told me that he wanted to come by, he was expressing in the text messaging that he wanted to sell the home. He did not at any time tell me he was coming by to make repairs.
Yes,
Said that he needed
yes,
to
ma'am.
show the home because he was trying to sell it. Miss Henderson, I'm trying to sell the property, so I need to have my investors come by to look at it. That's what he said to me. He didn't say he was coming by in order to do repairs on the home. And I explained to him that I did not want a lot of people in the home because I had my things in there.
In December, he attempted to make an attempt to figure out what's going on, how can we resolve it. She suggested a date. He said that date couldn't work for her. And then she was like, okay, so suggest another date. And then there was dead silence. I'm not sure when she says she moved out most of her stuff, but she didn't even communicate that, hey, I'm not in here now. Can you treat the unit? If there is an issue, can you get in here and do repairs? She just shut down communication. And that's not fair. You're not even giving him an opportunity to make things right.
Well, I will say, listen, mice and roaches, they can be a myriad of reasons why they're there. They can be conditions that the landlord hasn't set. There can also be conditions that the tenant may very well contribute to. I've seen it both ways. It doesn't relinquish responsibility for either party. Obviously, both parties have their duty to try to maintain. But obviously, if it's been something that has gone on for an extended period, I have to give consideration to that because that's something that someone is living with. And she submitted evidence that not only does she hear the noises and the scratches, she sees the evidence of the feces and the drawers and the cabinets. And so that's going to be a significant depreciation of the value because that definitely affects the overall quiet enjoyment of your property or the property while she's a tenant there. I understand you're saying that she's tried to make a repair, but ultimately it has been unsuccessful. So give me 1 second. I'm going to calculate what I have as far as depreciation, and I'll come back.
Oh
There will
yeah,
be a
that's what
written
I've been waiting
possession,
on.
Ms. Henderson. Hold tight.
That's what I've been waiting on.
All right, Ms. Henderson, you're going to have a money judgment of $2,500, and that's consideration of the diminution of value of the, including the rats, the issues. The air is not really of an issue as much as it is because you.
Wow. Yeah, he did that. We still don't know how much he owed, but remember, 5 to 6 months unpaid, right? I think we can guess for a 3-bedroom house, she would have owed well over $2,500 for 5 or 6 months, right? Even if the rent was $1,000 a month, which I doubt, that would still be more than half of that. So I'm curious what the landlord is thinking in regards to that judgment.
You said she took possession with that knowledge as well as those conditions, not saying that they don't work, but you're saying they're not suitable to your liking. More importantly, I mean, I've seen other things with the property. The water is of issue, but at the same time, without having some consistent evidence of exactly or extended periods, and that's not quite where we're going, but we're going to give you that overall value. There is going to be that $2,500 money judgment, as well as that writ of possession that'll be available on the 22nd of May. All right. If you want to appeal, it'll be 7 days, but you'll be required to pay that money up front to the registry if that's what you're going to do. But that'll be the final word of the court. And
And what about the counterclaim with the mold and the harassment?
I've considered all of those things that you're looking at. As far as the mold is concerned, I didn't see any evidence.
Y'all, just a heads up. Don't go anywhere. We still got we still got quite a bit of this video left. So I'm guessing I was thinking it was going to be the landlord that was going to have a problem. It looks like the tenant still has some unresolved issues, but it's not done.
Of mold from what you submitted in your 32 slides.
So there's a slide that has the mold in the kitchen on slide number 8. You didn't see the mold?
Under sink view displays.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't see any significant.
That's not significant. Okay.
Well, not to the. I mean, do you have any mold anywhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where else?
It's in the upstairs bathrooms. Not to mention the toilet's not working that I expressed to him as well.
Oh my goodness.
Is not working? Which one?
Both of them. There's one on the first floor. There's one on the second floor.
So none of your
I
toilets
asked
are
him
working.
to. I'm sorry.
Hold on, Miss Anderson. None of your toilets are working.
They were not working. They were
How'd that
not
work?
working.
Okay.
Your Honor.
No. I what I'd like to do and be more specific with me, similar to when we're talking about when the water is off. Obviously, they're not going to work when the water is off during those periods.
Not when the water is off, sir.
So how long, and when, and are they still not working?
The toilets were not functioning for at least 2 months.
Okay, when?
That's what made me move. And this was the January through February. Let's see, January, February, I expressed that to him immediately after he said that he was coming by to try and have someone to view the home. I expressed that to him several times. He said, "Oh, Miss Andrea, why
So
didn't
tell me,
you?"
wait. Too slow.
Yeah. Whoa. Please tell me she has some documentation of her complaining about that. And I mean, that is an immediate issue, right? If you can't flush the toilet. So you should have reoccurring documentation of you continuously telling them they need to come and resolve this. I would have thought that the judge would have seen that already. I'm guessing she didn't present that. So now it may seem like she may be just referring to word of mouth conversations now, which now I see why we got more time left. They're either going to have to admit that, or she's going to have to come up with some documentation or something.
Because it's odd that you're telling me the toilets don't work, and this is the first time you're missing.
I've listed all of my concerns.
No, listen, no.
That's not true.
But my job is to ask you to tell me. So you need to tell me your concerns, right? As it's your responsibility, because these are your counterclaims. I'm reviewing your evidence, but your evidence isn't very clear about, hey, the homes didn't work for 2 months. That's not clearly identified on the evidence that you submitted to me. So what I'm asking you is when you say they didn't work, they didn't flush, and if you didn't flush, where did you go to the bathroom?
Exactly.
I went to the restroom at work.
Okay, so that's 8 hours, maybe.
10.
Okay, so when you go home, you don't pee, you don't poop?
Sir.
No?
He has to ask
I'm
that.
being honest with you.
That's
I'm
important.
a human being.
As disgusting as it may sound, I had to use the water that trickled from the bathtub in order to try and flush the toilet down.
Huh?
And yes, I did try and plunge often. I've actually asked one of the homeowners in the area to try and assist me.
Your Honor, I don't believe this is true. She never made him aware of any of these things that she's bringing up now.
You got to have evidence.
I mean, you even said you can't live in a house where you can't take a shower, you can't use your toilet. Like, these things were not made aware, or Mr. Grant would have tried to make the repairs.
Did you put that in writing that your toilet wasn't working
Right.
and you couldn't use the restroom? And why wasn't it working? It didn't produce any water?
Yeah. Why?
The low drainage in the toilet that went throughout the apartment. It was I guess this low flow.
Low water pressure. So you're saying
low water pressure.
Listen, telling me that it doesn't work, it opposed to telling me that you, for instance, if you're saying that because of the low water pressure, the bowl that fills up the water, you're saying doesn't fill it up sufficiently to flush the toilet, so you have to subsequently get water from your bathtub or another place in order to fill it in, so it'll have enough water in there to flush.
Yeah, that's
Is that
crazy.
what you're saying? I now I will admit that's frustrating, and
That's
I'll
crazy.
admit that's problematic. But that's not being able to use the bathroom at your home.
Nah, who finna do that every time?
I'm not trying to diminish what you're saying, but you're also trying to communicate to the court that your 5 to 6 to 7 months worth of no payment is because of these issues, and I think they're significant. I do think they're significant. But from what she's expressed to me is that you didn't have rats when you moved in, and if you get rats later, that's again going to still be on them. That's why we have the diminution of value. But I am concerned that when you're telling me things and you're telling me big things like this, and those aren't the first things that you're bringing up, and they're telling me that they weren't aware of it.
Well, here's the thing. She said that she listed it, right? Which would mean that she had put it on the documentation to turn in before this court date. I would say that's better than bringing it up now spontaneously after a judgment. So if she actually did list that somewhere and write it down where it had list out the problems that it had, then that is substantial, in my opinion. I don't think that's fair that she has to remember everything, especially the other lady keeps cutting her off. Now, I'm gonna be honest. In this type of scenario where if she's having to do all that, I said it has to be something in writing. Yeah, it has to be something in writing showing that you were reaching out about this immediate and urgent issue. But I would even also say if it's been a problem for one month, 2 months, you need to have some video recordings of what that process was and what was going on. A lot of them, a lot of different instances. Like every time you have to do it, you need to record it. And this is just moving forward, just anybody. You should record that because once you get here, you want it to just be clear and outlined because that is egregious, but you got to have your proof. It can't just be your word against someone else's when it comes to that, in my opinion.
Sir, he was selling the home as is, but he didn't tell me he was renting it as is.
No, but it's not that you're missing the point. I'm not suggesting that he gets away with not having the property in a habitable condition. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that the conditions that you're referencing are going to get credit for it because they're partially his responsibility. But what you're communicating to me and saying, well, no, Judge, what you've given me is not enough. It really needs to be no money. And I'm saying you're communicating to these things, hey, no, what about this? What about that? But it's not really to the level in which you're expressing, similar to the air conditioning. So I'll give you some credit for that as well. And I'll drop it down to 2250. But ma'am, these disputes have to happen if it's that bad, you know what I mean? And it's January and your lease is already up in January. I understand we don't have lots of places to go. And I understand that landlords sometimes don't do things that they're supposed to do. And they're not going to get away with it because they're not going to get the same compensation that they ultimately be entitled to. But we got to be on our other side. If we got bathrooms not working, man, and waiting for that, if you feel like that's such a big deal, you know what I mean? You got to write him a letter and say, you got to do your due diligence. I'm out of it. You know what I mean? And hey, you need to pay me for my inconvenience.
Yeah.
But when you're sitting there for that time, it really causes an inconvenience on you too, right? Because it's like you're there, you're not paying. You're like, well, I don't want to pay anything because of how bad it is. But you're there at the same time. So
right.
It's a double-edged sword. But I'm going to do it for $22.50. I do want you to find a new place. I don't want you to live in that kind of condition. And Miss Brown, y'all know what y'all got to do. But
she's already noted that she's moved out. She's moved out most of her stuff, Your Honor, but she hasn't.
No, Miss Brown, let me be very, very clear with you. She has not moved out. She still has possession. It would not behoove you to go over there or to interfere with her moving.
No, Your Honor.
After the 22nd. But she has not moved. Everything that she's told me pretty much indicates that she has not moved. She's got stuff there. She's still got the key. That's called possession. So it'll be tied until the 22nd. And there'll be the money judgment of the $22.50, and that'll be the final order of the court. And I really appreciate the lady's time. Yes, ma'am.
May I ask you one more thing? I'm not sure if I understand what the $22.50 represents. Does that represent? Is that going to be taken?
Right, that's past due rent. So the 2250 is what she's gonna owe you guys in lieu of the condition and the repair and the counterclaims that she has.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it.
All right. All right, thank you. We'll get a copy of the order in your email. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I think if she would have had the documentation and like some video showing the toilet or whatever, I think he'd have took a little bit more off. However, I don't think he still would have taken the entire balance off because he brought up he brought up the bomb that just shatters every argument, which is why would you still live there? Why would you still live there? Now, the only thing that I can assume could be said to rebuttal that is, just okay, I'd have to pay to move, right? And 3-bedroom house, that's a lot. That's a very logistically challenging, especially for people in this financial climate. But at the same time, that's not an excuse because you haven't paid rent. So the rent that you would have had to pay would have been actually sufficient for the move. And then funny enough, you could have actually took them to court in order to sue for that money back. So definitely fair. Definitely fair from the judge. And I think that was a good one. I think that was really a good battle. But we'll leave it there, y'all. If you could like the video, I greatly appreciate it. Only takes a second and actually helps out more than you know. And also, if you could hype the video, hype is a new feature that YouTube offers where it helps smaller content creators like myself. And basically, when you hype, it actually pushes us to the extent that it pushes the larger content creators. So you just press the hype button and it shows the points. And because I am a smaller channel, smaller creator, we actually get more points per hype, and it was designed for us. And that's why. And then also Patreon's link below if you want to see self-improvement content as well. But until then, I'll catch you in the next video.